What is going on, guys? Crazy Pizza Man 21 here. Today we're going to be talking about a recent interview with GOG's Senior Business Development Manager, Mr. Pazinski, where he was going in depth on the process of getting the original Resident Evil trilogy onto their platform. Now, really quick, those of you who don't know, GOG is a website / platform that is really just similar to Steam in a way, where you could buy and download games, and they're a little bit more heavy on game preservation and, you know, DRM-free downloads and stuff like that. So, very important company to have in this day and age, in my humble opinion. But what's very interesting about this interview is that he was describing in depth kind of Capcom's mentality towards the original games, or vanilla games, I guess, as he describes them, stating that, quote, Capcom were like, yeah, we have all these remakes, it's already the superior experience to those games. They didn't really see the value in bringing back the vanilla versions. It took a lot more convincing that there is an audience that has a lot of memories about those games and would love to experience them exactly the same way again. Thankfully, we were able to convince them. And I highly agree with this sentiment, 100%. I think this is just a very ignorant statement on Capcom's part, if this is true. GOG is a very reputable company. I really don't see why he would lie about this. With how Capcom goes about things, I really wouldn't even be surprised if this was true, because the original Resident Evil trilogy also just finally got added to PlayStation, but only after the GOG re-releases as well. And this is why I buy these games every time they're re-released, because you need to support, or else these games are going to disappear forever. Capcom clearly doesn't care about game preservation. Newer fans of the franchises also clearly don't care about game preservation for the most part. There are some new fans that do really appreciate these old games, and I don't want to lump them in, but there are a lot of new people that dog on these old games, and I think to those people and Capcom, you should probably have some respect for these games, because you wouldn't have this franchise if it weren't for these games. You wouldn't have these modern remakes if it weren't for these games. These games are the reason why we're all sitting here even talking about this franchise to this very day. Not to mention, this is going to be a little inflammatory. I'm going to say this a little, give that little disclaimer, but Resident Evil is long past its golden age. And you could disagree with me, that's fine, but let's realistically look at this. Resident Evil 7 is basically just Resident Evil 1, with different characters, a different backdrop. It's still a mansion. You have to survive to get out of it. There's even a pursuer enemy like Resident Evil 1 Remake had. To be fair, Jack obviously works a little bit different, but the same concept is the same thing. It's literally just in first person. Resident Evil 8 is literally just Resident Evil 4. It's about a guy going to a remote village in Europe to save a little girl from what's clearly a cult, and also a bunch of esoteric castle dwellers. They have to fight through a village, they have to fight through a castle. It's the same game. And then the games that aren't new installments are literally all just remakes of games from 20 years ago. Nothing that they've made in the last 10 years with this franchise, actually I would go even farther than that. Nothing in the last, maybe, like, since 2012 maybe, with Resident Evil 6, still has not been nearly as good as it was in the late 90s and early 2000s. That was just the peak of Resident Evil. Let's just call a spade here. And Capcom clearly agrees, or else they wouldn't keep remaking all the older games. Resident Evil 9 is the only thing that even seems remotely original that they're trying to do, and even then, they're just going back to Raccoon City. They retconned Raccoon City being wiped off the map just so you can go back to Raccoon City and have that entire location just rehashed, instead of doing something new, which people want to dog on Resident Evil 6 for doing, that God forbid Resident Evil 6 tried to do something different with the franchise. I mean, granted, it's not the best game, it's far from it, but at least it tried to do something different, and I respect that for it more than any of the last dozen games that they've put out recently. And that's probably a controversial take to say, but I'm just tired of seeing the same thing over and over again, especially if it's lower quality. None of these remakes have held a candle to the original, except of course the Resident Evil 1 remake, because it was made by literally the same exact people. Resident Evil 2 completely messed up the story. I mean, the gameplay in it is great. I love the gameplay of Resident Evil 2. I platinumed it twice. I have it on PC and both PlayStations that I have it on, PlayStation 4 and 5. I really love the Resident Evil 2 remake. Is it better than the original though? No, they ruined the story. And even without the A and B, even without the B scenarios being removed and the zapping system and all that, even if you did want to just streamline it between two campaigns, sure, fine, like that would have been great. But they messed even that up though. They used Ada's uncanon death, where she falls. The fall ending was never canon because she actually dies in that ending. That's why in that ending she doesn't come with the rocket launcher at the end. You don't fight the boss or anything like that. That ending's not canon. The canon ending is Ada getting slammed into the machine by Mr. X, telling Leon that she actually loves him, then coming back with just enough strength to help him with the rocket launcher at the end to finish Mr. X off. That's always been the canon Resident Evil 2 ending, and that doesn't happen in the remake. So her coming back with the rocket launcher doesn't make any sense. The characters fighting the same boss in the same spot twice doesn't make any sense. And it just boggles my mind too, because they said they wanted to streamline the game to make it only 2 campaigns instead of 4. Totally fine, but how did they mess that up? There's less campaigns than there were in the original, and they still messed up the story, and there's still constant overlaps everywhere. I don't know how they did that. I don't know how they created plot holes that didn't exist when they had less to work with. Resident Evil 3, same thing. I don't need to do a whole song and dance about Resident Evil 3 because we all know how much of that they cut. Resident Evil 4, as you can see here, I'm using for stock footage over my rant, this is footage from the HD project. The HD project is proof that Resident Evil 4 never needed a remake, it just needed a proper, loving, tender, and sweet update. Going over all the textures, making them look nice and pretty, because even the original Resident Evil 4 never even still doesn't look dated. It looks like a PlayStation 3 era game, because it came out at the end of the PS2 cycle, and it was a GameCube game, which we all know the GameCube was more powerful than the PS2, blah blah blah. But like, look, Resident Evil 4, the remake, is very good. I don't want to dog on Resident Evil 4, it's a very well-made game, but the original is still better. It never needed a remake. I said this in my full overview of the game, but even though Resident Evil 4, the gameplay itself was like fleshed out, again, they missed the mark with the story though. Like, they just don't understand the stories of these games, and it's also similar to the VR version of 2005, was heavily censored. They removed all the jokes that made the game really funny and gave it its charm. They made it super serious, and it just doesn't really work, because Resident Evil has never really been a very serious franchise. It's always been campy, and they took the campiness out of Resident Evil, and it just doesn't feel great. And look, you can disagree with me, that's fine, but next time you hit me with the argument, just play the originals, just remember, we're trying to. We are fighting hard to still play the originals so you guys can enjoy the newer games and us old heads can still enjoy the older games, but that is getting harder and harder to do each year. So, yeah. I don't know, man, we're trying over here, but anyways, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me, whatever it is, we all love Resident Evil. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments on this. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe for more Resident Evil stuff, and I will catch you guys on the flip side.